Hello, I've just seen the advanced cover art for my next book, Pantheon of the Egyptians, which is about Egyptian mythology and a little bit of ancient Egyptian history and suggestions and possible formats for ritual and ceremony for people interested in communicating with the Egyptian deities. So, to mark the event, a small event in my life, but it makes me happy, I'm going to read you a prayer to Chihute, the deity or one of the deities particularly associated with writing and books and literature. So I'll read a version which is in a reconstruction transliteration of Egyptian, ancient Egyptian that is, not modern day Egyptian. There are ongoing discussions and disputes within linguistic circles as to precisely how certain words should be pronounced. So this is a version. I'm not suggesting it is the absolute accurate version, or indeed that there ever was an absolutely accurate version. Egypt is a big country. It had lots of tribal districts. There were regional accents in different parts of the country, so the way they pronounced a word in one district of Egypt would have potentially been slightly different as to how that word would have been pronounced in a different district of Egypt, much as you get different accents in Britain, different accents in America, different accents in France, and so on. So this is a possible rendition. So I'll do the Egyptian version first, then the English translation, and then tell you a short story. Nahaz, 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 Iwi Imhotep, Sinahaz, Nefertachute Nebmedu, Sheshem Pet Taduat, Imnach, Heka Neb Medunecha, Senachaz Nefer, Ia I Achu Emhat, Hainach Imirchutnech. In English, awaken. Awaken, awaken in peace. Arise in beauty, Chihute, Lord of words, guide of heaven, earth, and the world beyond. Excellent in magic, Lord of the sacred words, arise in beauty. The moon is shining in the heavens. Those in your following sing your praises. That's the poetry bit, or prayer bit. Long, long ago, when the world was young, Ra in his heavens divided his eyes into the left eye and the right eye. The left eye was the moon in the sky, the right eye the sun in the sky. The left eye was embodied as the goddess Tefnut. She who was the moon, she who ruled the tides, the ebb and the flow, the passage of the waters, the moisture in the air, the very breath of the gods themselves that clouds in the air. And one day there was a terrible rift, a terrible falling out between Ra and his daughter Tefnut. She stormed from the land, unable to be in his presence any longer, unable to live beneath his house, beneath his rule. She stormed out of Egypt and into the land of Nubia. And there she took the form of a lion. And where Tefnut went, so the moisture, the waters of the land went with her. They receded and they receded and they receded with every step she took on her great lioness paws across the desert. And the land of Kemet, the land of Egypt, got drier and drier and drier. It went into the deadest period of the year, when plants withered and fruit dried and animals collapsed and died and humans collapsed and died upon the earth for lack of water. The drought was horrific, it was terrible. And word came to Ra in his heavens that his daughter Tefnut, in the land to which she had fled, into the land of Nubia, was still so worked up with rage and fury and anger at him that she was venting her spleen upon the people of the land of Nubia. Far from bringing them joy and happiness, she had stormed into their land as an angry, hungry lioness, the very embodiment of the waters of the earth, and she was flooding the land just as Egypt was as dry could be. So Nubia was being drowned beneath the waves of this tumultuous goddess, this raging, fuming mistress of the waters and of the moistures of the air. And the people, the beasts, the creatures of Nubia were crying out for help, for aid to their own gods, to the spirits of their own land, but those spirits were unable to protect them from the wrath of Tefnut. And so Ra spoke to two of his loyalist, most devoted followers. He spoke to Jehuti, the wise ibis-headed god, who scratched the end of his beak and thought long and hard about what they should do. And whilst he was planning and plotting, for Jehuti was a great thinker, a great scholar, a wise, profound and insightful being. So Ray was talking to Shu. And Shu, Lord of the winds, Lord of the air, also thought long and hard about what they should do. And Shu had with him the gift of great speed. So when Jehuti had finished consulting with his wife, his consort Sheshet, she of the libraries, she of the books, she of the ancient collections, indeed she who had invented writing and kept it as a secret amongst the gods before her husband Jehuti had gone and taught it to humanity, the first great teacher. When Jehuti had done consulting with the wisdom of his wife, for she was not one to leave her libraries, she loved the shelves upon shelves upon shelves of books and scrolls and papyrus writings and stone tablets carved with ancient hieroglyphs. She loved to be amongst her books. She had no wish to walk upon the land, but Jehuti was a more adventurous soul. The kind of scholar, the kind of academic that wants to be out there in the fields rather than collating the tomes of wisdoms in the libraries. He consulted with her, and then he was replete with the knowledge he needed. And he turned to Shu and said, I am ready if you are ready. And Shu whipped him up and took him in his arms and flew at tremendous speed out of the land of Egypt and into the land of Nubia. And there they settled upon the earth. And they looked around them at the carnage, the broken bodies, the dead humans, the dead animals, the shattered, broken down trees, the riverbanks broken and burst by the torrents and the raging waters of Tefnut. And they tracked her down, they followed her across the land, they followed the trail of carnage left in her wake, until in the distance they saw the great lioness composed of a body of roaring, raging waters. And they said, well, what shall we do to try and calm her down? And they came up with their plans. They approached her, calling from afar. Jehuti began to sing. That reedy voice of the ancient academic began to sing and recite the ancient prayers, and Shu, the breath of air, whirled around, causing all of the musical instruments in the land of Nubia to begin thrumming and strumming and playing. He blew upon the pipes, he plucked upon the strings, he beat upon the drums, until the land was filled with music to accompany ancient Jehuti's songs and hymns of praise to the beauty of Tefnut, to the wisdom of Tefnut, to the compassion of Tefnut. Song after song after song, music after music after music, the two gods played. And to that length, Tefnut ceased roaring and thundering and bellowing long enough to actually hear the music. And having heard it, she calmed down and she sat And she listened to the songs, to the lyrics, to the tunes, to the music, to all of the soothing words being said to her. And the lyrics of the songs, each one following on from the one before it, assured her of her welcome home in Egypt, in the land of Kemet, assured her of reconciliation with her father, ensured her that she would be celebrated and rejoiced and beloved when she returned to the land, when the waters came back to Egypt, when the Nile waters began to flow again, when Hapi, the god of the Nile, was fulfilled once again. And having been convinced of all of these things through song after song, through story after story, through lyric after lyric, she consented, now calmed down, she consented to return. And they began the walk back, for Tefnut did not want to be whipped up into the winds of Shu. She wanted to make her own way in procession. And as they made their procession back to the land of Egypt, Jehuti summons the survivors in the land of Nubia to join with them, whispering to them offers of reward, of food, of aid with their broken, shattered land, restoring it to full function, with offers of gold and offers of silver. And so people, humans and animals alike from the land of Nubia, joined in this small parade of 3 figures, which became 10 figures, became 20 figures, became 100 figures, became 1,000 figures, parading through the land of Nubia. And people plucked up musical instruments that Shu was playing with his magical powers, and they began to join in, playing those instruments themselves, singing along with the reedy voice of Chehute, giving full throttle, full voice to those songs, and adding in their own songs from the land of Nubia, rejoicing that Tefnut was going home, leaving their land in peace, until at length they passed across the border into the land of Kemet, to the land of Egypt itself. And there Tefnut was so overjoyed to be home, to be amongst her people again, to be reunited, that she stormed and ran and ran and ran upon her 4 paws along the dried riverbed of the Nile, and a great flood of water went with her, bursting the banks of the Nile and spreading out and out and out across the dried, parched desert soils of the Deshret, the red land, the desert itself, and sweeping with it all of the shattered, broken plants and the broken bodies of animals that had been consumed and drowned in a rage in Nubia and other places that they had passed through. All of it swept into Egypt itself, down through the river, bursting out across the land into the houses, and the people who lived in those houses took note of this, and that it would perhaps become a regular event, because rifts between father and daughter were not uncommon, and this might happen again and again and again with alarming regularity. And so in the time to come they learnt to build their houses, build them upon sandbanks and platforms and impacted earth, so that they would be above the floodwaters, so that the waters would swirl around the outside of the communities but not actually go into people's houses. Not quite building on stilts, but not far off it. And when finally Tefnut reached the very end of Egypt, having gone through Upper Egypt and out into Lower Egypt, and then meeting the waters of the Mediterranean, all was happy in the world, well, in Egypt. All was rejoicing, all was singing and dancing. The people, those who had survived the dreadful, dreadful droughts and the baking, relentless heat, splashed in the waters, rejoiced in the waters, even waved at the crocodiles to see them swimming past in the waters. And the return of the hippos, and the return of the water birds, and the return of all of the other things that had fled Egypt in order to survive and find salvation elsewhere. They all came back in a great festival, a great party, and this became an annual event. With the receding of the waters, the terrible heat that parched and dried the land each year, and then the great floods of the waters rushing down and down through Egypt, bursting the banks. That rift between father and daughter and the reconciliation between father and daughter, reenacted year after year after year for thousands upon thousands of years, until at least they built the Aswan Dam. But that's another story, and the end of this one.